What's going on, y'all? Today we are going to talk a little bit about the election and Kamala Harris and who it appears she has chosen to be her running mate, along with a few other issues that I think we need to address. We're going to get into the Olympics and how biological reality is being ignored completely in women's sports. And another Democrat says something unfathomably stupid. We're going to get into all of that and more coming up. So let's get into it. All right, y'all, please hit that like button, subscribe, share these videos, comment. We would love to hear from you. The more you like and share and comment, the less we have to deal with the algorithm that is actively trying to suppress content like mine and others, especially during this election season. We're seeing all kinds of stories about Google and all these other platforms suppressing conservative content because they don't want it out there. So please help us out, help us get the word out so that we don't have to deal with that nonsense. And you can also find us on socials at Mission Ready Men on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X if you want to call it that, and Truth Social. And if you want the audio podcast, it's on Spotify, Spreaker, and pretty much wherever you prefer to get your podcast content from, you'll find it there. And if you like the shirt I'm wearing, head over to 7armors.com, the number 7armors.com, and pick one up. All right, y'all. Let's hit it.
Hit it, sweetheart.
I haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about the election per se, aside from banging on Kamala Ding Dong for her stupidity. And the American Pravda, the campaign, they want us to believe that she is younger, smarter, a better debater, a better communicator than President Trump. And I would say that they actually have a point. She is younger. But all the other stuff, smarter, better communicator, I don't think so.
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We must together work together to see where we are headed, where we are going, and our vision for where we should be.
Because we have the ability to see what can be, unburdened by what has been, and then to make the possible actually happen.
To see what is possible, to see what can be, unburdened by what has been.
That is a Marxist trope. That is Marxist propaganda, and it sounds stupid. It sounds asinine. Well, because it is. But it's also something that these Marxist communists are taught. Her father is a Marxist. So this is where she gets it from.
To reject the notion that the way things have always been has to be the way things will continue to be.
I have a motto. I eat and drink no for breakfast.
I eat no for breakfast.
There is no vaccine for racism. Talking about
Is there a vaccine for stupidity?
the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time.
Well, I think culture is a reflection of our moment and our time, right? And present culture
Spit it out, lady.
is the way we express how we're feeling about the moment. And we should always find times to express how we feel about the moment that is a reflection of joy, because It comes in the morning.
No longer.
Oh my goodness. It, it's good every time.
Are you necessarily keeping those private files in some file cabinet that's locked in the basement of the house? It's on your laptop, and it's then therefore up here in this cloud.
She really thinks that data is,
That exists above us, right? It's no longer in a physical place.
Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong.
okay. A lot of tech people probably are not familiar with, not, a lot of non-technical people probably don't understand the idea of the cloud. But I'm sure they all get that that it is a physical space and that it is stored on servers somewhere, right? I mean, and how's that analysis about Ukraine and Russia, which is about as advanced as first grade geography? I mean, and this is the person that they think is so brilliant. This is the person that they want us to believe is going to just ridiculous. So if they manage to steal the election again, which they are going to try and do, and I've up until these past few election cycles, I've always been the vote on election day, but we have to put these votes in the bank. We have to get out there as soon as early voting is available. We need to take advantage of it, because I don't have time to get into it today, but there is a story, and I'll probably do another video on it later on in the week, where CISA, and I can't remember what CISA stands for, but they put out this warning that the voting machines are vulnerable and subject to DDoS attacks and all kinds of other things. And election day could be, there could be a lot of problems. And so if there are problems and you waited till election day, you may not get to vote, which is what they want, because they know that Republicans, conservatives tend to do it on election day. So we need to flip the script, and we need to make sure that we get our votes banked early so that we can avoid those troubles, because you know they're going to do it on purpose. But anyway, if they manage to steal it again, which they're going to try and do, she will be the absolute worst president in the history of this country. And after experiencing Biden for the past closing in on 4 years now, that is a scary proposition. And that does not bode well for the. Can you believe somebody actually wants to put Biden on Mount Rushmore? I'll talk about that later. But they want us to believe that Kamala Ding Dong is this no-nonsense prosecutor going up against a felon in Donald Trump. They want us to believe that she doesn't believe in open borders. They want us to believe that she is not for abortion on demand, even though her vice president pick has signed laws in the state of Minnesota that allow abortion right up until the moment of birth. Now, if she was against that, she wouldn't have picked that guy, would she? She's for letting criminals walk. She's just she's a mess. She is an absolute mess. And her running mate could be the biggest gift to Republicans and conservatives if we play it right. But like I said, we'll talk about that later on. But before we go down the rabbit hole of come on and ding dong and the Democrat platform, let's just quickly compare Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. During Trump's presidency, we had 1.9% inflation. We had gas at around $2 a gallon, depending on your location. Some places less, some places more, but average about $2. We had a secure border. Maybe not the most secure border, like Trump likes to say. There, depending on which think tank you go to, it was the most secure or it wasn't. But nevertheless, we did not have tens of millions of people pouring over the border in the years that Trump was in office. But since Harris has become the border czar, even though they're denying now that she was, even though there are congressional resolutions to that effect, and Biden on video announcing her as the person in charge of the border. So they just lie. They just lie. Lying comes as easy as breathing to these people. It's fascinating, really, to watch. But I support President Trump in this election cycle because I'm old enough to remember the 1.9% inflation. I'm old enough to remember being able to spend $100 at the grocery store and get back enough food to last for a good little while. I'm old enough to remember being able to fill my gas tank up for $60, which at the time I was thinking was ridiculous, but now, I mean, and I do have my truck does have a fairly larger than normal gas tank, so there's that. But anyway, I'm old enough to remember how much better all these things were before Biden came along and built it all back better. Now, that all being said, I understand why people have problems with President Trump. I understand the things he said with regard to the Second Amendment, red flag laws, the spending bills that he signed, the jabs, Operation Warp Speed, all of that. I get it. I understand it. Kyle Rittenhouse just not too long ago got into some trouble because he's in the 2A community and some people got in his ear and he decided he wasn't going to vote for President Trump, even though Trump was one of his biggest supporters when all that was going on. But anyway, I get it. I get why people would be reluctant to support him. But the problem is we have a binary choice right now. We have a binary choice. We have a choice between communists and free market capitalists. We have a choice between these Marxists who want to control every aspect of our lives and conservatives who, and people will say he's not a conservative, and he's probably not, but he did govern as a conservative, so there's that. That's the choice we have before us. That is the choice we have before us, and if we choose to write in somebody's name or stay home, we're going to elect Kamala Ding Dong and her communist vice president, who he's actually on record saying that socialism is another man's neighborliness. He's a straight up communist, and so is she. President Trump has a track record of success that only the most diehard communist, leftist radicals would even try to deny. That said, well, let's just put it this way. If you're a Christian, you cannot vote for any of these leftists. You just can't. You cannot vote for them. They are for killing unborn babies, as I already stated. Her running mate Tim Walz has signed bills into law allowing abortion up until the moment of birth. He has signed bills into law allowing genital mutilation and cross-sex hormones to children. He signed bills into law that prevent courts from taking children away from parents who want to transition their kids. Transition. He hasn't met a child he doesn't want to kill or mutilate. So you cannot vote for these people. I mean, his position seemed radical to us, but that is normal on the left. So if you truly believe in the Bible, if you truly call yourself a Christian, you can't vote for these people. You just can't. And if you're a Christian and you find yourself inclined to vote for these people, you need to check yourself. You need to check yourself. And before we get off this topic real quick, we have to address the whole race thing. Donald Trump has questioned Kamala Ding Dong's black bona fides. And the left is having a collective conniption. She's not black. I said it. She's not black. Her mother is Indian, her father's Jamaican, and her father is descended from Irish slave owners in Jamaica. I mean, her skin is dark. Her father's skin is dark. Her mother's skin is dark. But her ancestry is not in any way similar to mine. And she's never claimed to be black until about 5 minutes ago. You have those videos of her with Mindy Kaling talking about how she looks like half of her family because she's Indian. But while I was going through all of this, getting ready for the show, I came across something that should prove once and for all who the actual racists are. Check it.
For a lot of Americans, particularly a lot of Black Americans, there is some sense of discomfort about the fact that when you look at high-profile, high-status, successful Black Americans, many of them are themselves multiracial, first or second generation Americans, immigrants or kids of immigrants, or they're themselves intermarried. There are some folks, there's a group called the American Descendants of Slaves, ADOS, a kind of emerging movement that you see in some spaces where people say, hey, wait a second, you have folks who are not part of this multi-generational, long Black American story who are claiming this mantle. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing, Lulu.
I'm just saying that this is an argument that you are putting forward.
This is something I'm talking about as an analyst to describe the fact that the Black community is not a monolith.
Check out the white lady. I think she's Hispanic, but you only would know that from her name. Trying to white-splain to the guy who is analyzing the public opinion. And she's trying to tell him that he's completely wrong. Just
there are a lot of complicated, conflicted feelings. More than twice as many Black Americans oppose intermarriage as white Americans.
Skin color is black, you're black. It is a completely ridiculous argument to be made in a country where you had the one drop, where you had the one drop rule, where you were actually penalized legally in this country if you had a single drop of black blood. To now say that this woman, who is clearly black, is somehow suspicious and is wearing a mantle and trying to assume some kind of ridiculous identity.
I'm describing public opinion. I'm describing the fact that this current does exist. And I think that when we're trying to understand the electorate...
Let Raihan talk.
It's a minor... And she actually invoked the one drop rule. She actually said that.
I think it's important to understand that this is one of those cleavages. I do not think that it was a good thing for Donald Trump to use this line of attack. I agree with Kara. Stick to policy.
This is not what Donald Trump.
This is not
what Donald Trump was doing. You are trying to explain something. If you asked Donald Trump, what were you up to, Mr. Trump? He's not going to be like, you know, that there's this current in the African American community that talks about the descendants of slavery. Do you think that is what he was up to? He was going there in order to do what he always does, which is to throw as much as he can against the wall and to see what sticks.
I'm afraid part of what I'm trying to do is actually try to give some insight into the fact that public opinion is changing, it's divided, and there is a big conversation about this. I don't think that this is the best angle to pursue, but I do think that when you're talking about the black community, he's not looking to win 90% of the black vote. He's looking at what are interesting cleavages and divides within that population.
And she was, I can't remember that woman's name, and it doesn't really matter, because she is typical of what you find in the American Pravda among white people who think they know better, who think they can tell black people how their experience actually is, as opposed to what. I mean, she's just obnoxious, as most of them are when they get off on that kind of thing. And here's the other thing: Trump doesn't need to win 95% of the black vote. He doesn't even need to win 85% of the black vote. If he can win, I don't know, let's say if he can get up to 25, 30% of the black vote, he wins going away, provided they don't cheat. But it's just astonishing. She's probably one of the people who would call me a black white supremacist. The Olympics are about 3/4 of the way over, I guess, at this point, maybe a little more than that. And since the Olympics started, women's boxing has been in the spotlight. And that's because there are two dudes fighting in the women's division, Imani Khalif and Lin Yuting. And they both have won their matches. They secured medals, and they will probably end up winning the gold. I'm not sure. I haven't really been keeping up on their path at this point. I just know that they're out there beating up on women. But they will probably end up winning the gold in their respective weight classes. This really shouldn't have to be said, but dudes do not belong in women's sports. And the fact that I feel like I have to say that, the fact that it is such a controversial thing for me to say, is really sad. But it's a hill I am willing to die on. Now, the gender cultists, and I use that word purposefully, the gender cultists who have taken to calling people who don't want to have men and women's sports, they've taken to calling us ignorant and transphobes and hateful and saying that we hate these guys and all this other nonsense. And they're basing that on the fact that the reports are that these two were born with female genitalia, raised in their families as female, and they just happen to have higher levels of testosterone than your average female. when it comes to the test that showed that these women actually have XY chromosomes, which accounts for their 3 or 4 times higher levels of testosterone than your average female, they just ignore that because reasons. And my initial response to that, is not very Christian, and I have repented for that. But my actual response is this: there are biological realities that just are what they are. The reality is what it is. And XY chromosomes make a person a man. XY chromosomes means that this person has gone through male puberty. It means that they have higher bone density, larger muscle mass. They're stronger, faster. So they have no business competing against women. And there are conditions, there are anomalies, there are deformities that can cause a person who has XY chromosomes to, I don't want to say present as female, because you can tell, even if you don't want to, you can tell. But they have the external anatomy, I'll put it that way, the external anatomy of a female. And they want us to believe that these two fall into that category. And that may or may not be true. We don't really know. But I want to call your attention to Caster Semenya. And some of you may remember, if you're sports fans, may remember this person. She was a masculine, whatever you want to say, masculine middle distance runner. And I'll say she. Dominating the sport. And I'll say she because from everything that I've read, she wasn't aware as she was competing that she had this condition, it wasn't until she underwent the testing that was required. But she was dominating her sport, and come to find out during the testing that she had internal testicles and XY chromosomes. Everything made sense after that. Caster Semenya was raised as a woman, but was actually a dude. And when you look at that picture, it's pretty obvious. And if I knew then what I know now, back then I didn't care. The whole gender confusion thing hadn't blown up yet. So to me, not really paying a whole lot of attention to women's sports, it just looked like a masculine woman who was winning. But like I said, no, if I had known then what I know now, I would have said that this person did not belong competing against women. And again, looking at that, it's completely obvious. And so is this. I don't see how you can look at these two boxers and justify having them beat up on women, or say something completely asinine like you need more information, or whatever the case may be. If you can justify that, you have proven beyond any shadow of a doubt that you are just denying reality. Reality completely escapes you. And if you're going to deny the obvious reality that is staring us all right in the face, how can anyone bother why would you bother trying to even have a discussion with someone like that? Because when you get into something like that, in any discussion, whether it's about this or the weather, you have to be able to acknowledge reality. Because if one person comes at things from a realistic point of view, and the other one comes at things from a fantastical point of view, you are never, ever going to agree. And it just becomes not worth it. And I came to this conclusion after all of this surfaced. I came to this conclusion because to justify these dudes beating up on women and making excuses for it, it's just ridiculous. You might as well say 2 + 2 = apple. It's that insane. And the only way it's going to end is if women refuse to participate. It's the only way it's going to end. And I know that is a hard ask, especially for women like this, who are competing against these dudes who have worked their entire lives to reach the pinnacles of their sport, whether it's boxing or track or whatever the discipline may be. When they've worked for that long, that hard to reach that point, to then say, well, I'm just not going to participate if I have to go up against a dude. I sympathize that is a very, very tough ask. I get it. But that's where fathers come in. That's where fathers come in, because this didn't just start at the Olympics. So when they start this madness in community leagues and in junior high and high school athletics, fathers need to put their foot down. Fathers need to go to these school boards and to go to these governing bodies of these athletic leagues and say, no, my daughter is not going to compete against the guy because it's just not fair and it's not safe. And if these school boards and other governing bodies refuse to listen, they got to pull their daughters out. And I know that's going to be tough for them to have to deal with, but it's their job to keep them safe. And if they don't, if they let it go because they're young and it's not going to be that dangerous, which is that's a dangerous mindset to have. But if they don't, they could end up like Peyton McNabb. They could end up like Angela Carini. They could end up having awards and accolades stolen from them, like Riley Gaines against Billy Thomas. They could end up like the field hockey player in Massachusetts who had her teeth knocked out by a dude playing girls field hockey. They could end up like any of those women, girls, or worse. And that's exactly where this is headed. And the way some of these people are acting, I suspect that even if a girl were to end up dying as a result of injuries sustained at the hands of a dude in athletic competition, they would just shrug their shoulders and say that's the price you pay for athletic competition. And sometimes because they obviously show no sympathy whatsoever now. They don't show any sympathy to Peyton now. So if she had ended up crippled or dead, if it saves one life, they say, then it's worth it. Except when it comes to catering to the gender delusion mob. Because that's exactly where this is headed. This is headed to a woman or girl getting crippled, or killed. And they couldn't care less. All right, y'all. I talked about this at the open, and this is just... I don't even know how to introduce it other than what I've already said. So let's just roll it.
So he was in a good place to make whatever decision, the top of his game. Such a
top of his game, really.
Consequential president of the United States, a Mount Rushmore kind of president of the United States.
Mount Rushmore. Mount Rushmore. Wow.
Want to know what comes next?
That he belongs up there.
Even Leslie Stahl's like, you can't be serious. Even Leslie Stahl is saying this.
Mount Rushmore. Lincoln and Joe Biden.
But you got Teddy Roosevelt up there, and he's wonderful. I don't say take him down, but you can add Biden.
The way she said even Teddy Roosevelt suggested that even though her words were, I'm not saying take him down, that's exactly what she was saying. That is exactly what she was saying, is take down Teddy Roosevelt and put up Joe Biden. Just... what? How do you respond to that? That is... She has said a lot of stupid things in her day. A lot of leftist politicians have said a lot of stupid things in her day. That's something I would have expected out of AOC. It's that stupid. Just... So now we have to question her cognitive abilities, because that statement was that stupid that I think it's time that somebody needs to tug on Nancy's cape and say, all right, it's time to go. Because, wow. Anyway, folks, that's all I got for you today. I will try to do better the next time. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and share these videos and leave us a comment, because we'd love to hear from you. The more you like and subscribe, the more people we reach, because we want to make sure that we reach as many people we can with the gospel of Jesus Christ and the message of liberty and hope that he's promised to us. And we want to preserve that for future generations. But as always, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.